Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
Let's go ahead and jump right into our first segment. Our first segment is What Happened Here Recently. Jason, today I want to talk about another way that you can use those PCs that just aren't coming back to the table and they've left their character sheet behind and their character was in the story, but they, for some reason or another, will not be coming back.
So they're just kind of in the folder or whatever.
Right.
Because those players aren't playing anymore or whatever. These are player characters who are never coming back.
Yeah, this character is not coming back ever. Okay. You know, somebody else wants to pick it up, or you do what I'm going to do with it, which is I converted 2 of my player characters that were not going to be coming back. I converted them into followers, which is the Perilous Wilds version of hirelings. And it worked really great because it meant there was never any like jump in the fiction as far as like who was around and who had what. And I knew generally what those characters' personalities were like. So I just kind of mimicked that and let the players use them as followers. And then when things got really, really pear-shaped, it was really easy for me to demonstrate how deadly the world was by setting one of them on fire.
Okay. So did you have this come up specifically, I guess? It sounds like it came up, like, in your game.
So I mentioned on a previous episode this set piece that I called the Noble Sacrifice.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so the basic setup for that was my characters were at this temple. It's the water temple, the Temple of Mayalela, which is just kind of a mashup of the Arabic for water and life. And all of these temple worshippers are being deceived by this evil wizard named Harlan Blackhand, who is actually from the Wizard Spawned Insanity supplement.
Oh, okay. I thought that sounded familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So players don't know much about him, so I'm not going to talk too much about him, but know that he can control fire. And he is basically tricking all of them into doing this sacrifice of one of their own worshippers and burning her to keep the waters pure is the reason why. And he very elaborately, has tricked these followers so that they are all on board with doing this ritual. And the players are trying to prevent it. And so they're getting up in Harlan's face, and he's just throwing insults at them, and he's not having it. And so one of the players turns to the paladin, who used to be a PC and is now a converted follower. The actual mechanical follower, not a follower of my...
Not a follower of the yeah.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd clarify that.
Yeah, just to be clear.
A capital F follower. Yep.
Yeah. The paladin decides that he's going to try and give a big speech to rouse all of the worshippers into rising against Harlan and how this is so wrong for them to be burning these people when they were worshipping life and water. One of the player characters who's still in, Mad Old Mills is the name of the character. He's a druid, and he's trying to help him by kind of keeping Harlan occupied. So he rolls to aid, and then he rolls for the paladin's move as well, which is do your thing in the Perilous Wilds book. And both are 6-, both rolls, the aid and the actual roll.
A lot of those going around lately.
Yeah, that's been happening. So I decided that this was a perfect time to show what Harlan's bag of tricks was. And so the paladin starts going into his speech, and then Harlan starts kind of cackling a little bit. And then the paladin is continuing, but he's starting to sweat. And then his face is starting to look red and kind of sunburned, and he starts to cough. And then, right in the middle of this grand speech to try and rouse the people, a gout of flames comes out of his mouth and his eyes as he incinerates from the inside. And all the player characters were just like, oh my god, is he dead? Did that just happen? Right. Instantly they were like at arms. They're like all over trying to jump on Harlan to stop him from burning their friend. But it's too late. He's just a follower PC now. He only had 6 health to begin with. So
okay, cool. Yeah.
I felt like it was a great way to kind of use a character that they cared about and that they were invested in, and to show the lethality of the situation and how dangerous it really was.
The reason why it works is because this was a player character before, and so they have like more of a connection to him, right? Than they would just like an NPC off the streets.
Yeah, and I mean, in the play-by post, we do every character has a color if they were a real character and not just an NPC. So I had kept these people even with their colors going. It kind of felt like they were a real, a real live person getting torched here in this situation. So it had a bit more of an emotional punch.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I think that's a smart idea. Yeah, it's really a good way of like adding a little bit of like shock value to the game, right?
Yeah.
It's always really shocking when a character that you care about just dies all of a sudden.
Yeah. And one of the player characters is like, they had like a grudge thing where they were both elves and they were kind of on two sides of the coin. And so he was like, man, I wish that I had like gotten to resolve our issues like before that had happened. And I was like, yeah, it's too late now though. I'm sorry.
There's always the contact spirit move.
There is. Yeah, that's true. You can always go and contact the spirit.
That's cool. I like it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that, but that's really all I have to say about it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is what should I be on the lookout for? So what I think we should be on the lookout for this week, Jason, is this thing called the Noteboard. Have you ever heard of it?
I've seen them. Yeah, I had to look it up when I saw your note, but I know people who use them.
Yeah, so I was in Houston just a few weeks ago. I got to play in a face-to-face game with the Houston Gauntlet, and this was the first time that I had seen one of these. Steve, who is now on the Gauntlet podcast, actually pulled it out, was using it at our table, and what it is a really neat kind of game board that, you can draw on and write on with dry erase markers and whatever, but it folds down to the size of a 3x5 card, and it comes in a nice little carrying pouch that also has the dry erase marker in the pouch.
Yeah, it's a foldable whiteboard, essentially.
Right. Yeah. But it just folds down like so much smaller and expands out to full-size kind of standard game board that I was really impressed with it. One side has square gridding and the other side has hex gridding, so you can really use it for just about any tabletop game that you want to, but I think it'd be great for Dungeon World. We were playing Star Wars World and it worked fantastic for that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've seen them. I use something similar. I use the Paizo flip mats. Paizo produces them for Pathfinder, but they're just like large dry and wet erase. I like the wet erase aspect of it. They're dry and wet erase, like just square grids, essentially, that fold down. Not quite as small as that Noteboard thing, which is pretty cool that folds down as small as it does. But it's the same idea, right?
Yeah, the really great thing about those, though, is like all the great art that you can get with them.
Oh, I use the blank ones, like the blank flip mats. I mean, they have the flip mats that have like settings on them or whatever, like graphics and stuff. I just use the blank ones that look like earth and stone or whatever. So
you've used the ship ones before.
I know. No, I do use the other ones. I do. I it's one of those things when I'm in the store and I'm like, it's like I don't play Pathfinder, but there's so much cool shit produced for Pathfinder, and I want to buy something, so I'll buy one of those flip mats. I'm like, ooh, like City Tavern flip mat. That sounds awesome. Oh, Abandoned Necropolis. I can make that into a thing. Yeah, I do. I buy those. No, but the little Noteboard thing is cool. I've seen those. What I like about them is I've heard that like it keeps the drawings pretty well. So like even after you fold it up, like you can like keep reusing that same whatever you had on there. It doesn't like smudge or anything.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I think it might depend on the marker you're using, but I think the one that they provide with it works pretty well with that.
Cool. Yeah, they're super handy.
Yeah. So if listeners want to find those, you can find them on thenoteboard.com, and I think they're about $12. So not.
Yeah, we'll put a link.
It's a good value for a useful tool. Let's move on to the next segment. Our next segment is What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be. Jason, I understand you have something you want to talk about this week.
I want to talk about debilities. So debilities are those little checkboxes near the stats on your playbook, right? There's like confused and shaky and weak and all that stuff, right? And whenever you take the debility, you get a -1 on that stat whenever you have to roll that stat until you do something in the fiction to address that debility, or drink a healing potion, because one of the healing potion options is to remove a debility. Applying a debility is pretty straightforward. If something happens in the fiction that makes sense, you can absolutely give the characters a debility. It's always a great option. I wanted to talk about debilities as a really, really useful GM tool. Okay. So this is one of those things where, you kind of learn this stuff the more you GM the game, right? And you kind of have this little archive of tricks up your sleeve, and debilities are a great one. So you're often in circumstances where things are going a little rough for the characters, okay? See Ramshackle Crow, episode 11. Things are going a little rough for the characters. And you don't necessarily want to deal damage again. Like, damage might be the right move to make. I mean, or it might be a legit move that you could do, like to have the creature do damage to the PC. But, you know, you may have reasons why, you know, maybe you don't want it to be so deadly as that. Or maybe you just don't know what to do. Like something happens in the fiction and you're called to like respond, you know, like either you have to make a hard move or you have to do a 7 to 9 or something like that. Debilities are great, like a pressure valve, right? Like to kind of release the tension. So, you know, the monster's hitting you. It's doing this, it's doing that, it's doing some damage. The third time the monster hits you, don't do damage. Like find a way to work a debility in there. See if like a debility is an appropriate thing. You know, you deal a debility. It gives them a -1 until they're able to deal with it, you know, on that stat. But it's a way of you being, you know, kind of punitive as a GM without having to go straight to damage. And it's also really nice because you don't have to think of something, you know, like you're in one of those moments where it's like, I don't really know what to do. I really don't want to just do damage again, but I'm having a brain fart moment right now and I don't really know what to do in the fiction. You know, that would be a good like penalty or whatever, or complication. And so, you know, I think a debility every now and then is a good move. So that's all I wanted to say. Just don't forget them. Like they're there. It's something you have access to, right? And I just think it's worth highlighting because I play in a lot of games where people forget about them a lot. So
yeah. I always, whenever I am playing with people and they end up with a debility, like it seems like it never gets healed. They never remember that you can use a health potion. They're always trying to figure out exactly how to take care of it.
Well, I wouldn't use a health potion either. You can do anything, you know, that makes sense in the fiction to get rid of a debility. Let's say you take the debility, you know, like shaky or something. And so, you know, when we have some downtime or we're making camp or we're in the village or whatever, I can say, I'm going to go like out back and I'm going to meditate and clear my thoughts. I'm going to go find the city baths or whatever and take like a hot bath to like, you know, cure this debility. You know, I think like my players, I just ask them to do something like that. The things that they choose to do, you know, can lead to more adventure, maybe trigger moves, who knows? But you just have to do something in the fiction to address the debility, I feel like. And that's, you know, that's good enough for me as a GM.
What about the scarred one? What kind of solutions do you have for that one?
The way I've done this in the past, this doesn't come up too often, but one thing I've done is I've asked the players to describe how their scarred face, it no longer turns people off, but rather is a badge of honor, or is a way that they show their toughness. Like, how do people perceive them perceive this scar as as a positive, or at least they no longer perceive it as repulsive or horrifying, right? So,
okay.
And it gives the player a chance to kind of like think about their character a little bit and think about ways that, you know, okay, I have this nasty, like, you know, claw slash across my face or whatever that, you know, some fucking monster gave me and it made me scarred. It didn't do any hit points at the time, but it scarred me. But now, you know, they've given you this ominous sounding nickname, you know, or they just generally treat you like a badass, right? So
sure. All right. That's great. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, just GM should remember debilities are there.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is what here is useful or valuable to me.
Okay, so we're going to do 3 more magic items from our magic item contest. Just a reminder to listeners, we are still taking submissions for the magic item contest. We will be until we record episode 14, which should be somewhere around the end of the month. The end of March, that is. Maybe a little bit into April. Not quite sure. You'll get a sense of it. We'll let you know. Somebody asked also, David, if they can submit more than one item for the contest. I think that's okay. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because the way I'm judging these is I'm just copying and pasting them without names into a document, and I'm looking them over and seeing which ones I like. In the initial, like, just sort of like, judging them, I'm not really thinking about who submitted them. I'm just looking at seeing which ones I like. If you want to submit more, I think that's great. More the merrier. So.
That being said, we reserve the right to cut you off if you start publishing a book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can put like 20, like that's too much. Right? We've gotten some really cool stuff so far, though. It's really exciting. Today is really going to be the first chance to kind of dive into some of them because last week we were so focused just kind of on the AP. We didn't really spend much time on it. So we're going to do 3 of them today, I think. And I want to start with one from listener Luke called the Spider Ring. This simple silver ring with a depiction of a spider can produce a seemingly infinite amount of silk from its abdomen. This near-transparent silken thread is stronger than wire and remarkably flexible. Unfortunately, though, it lacks the adhesive properties of an actual spiderweb, but don't let that dishearten you. This trinket will no doubt be invaluable for tripwires, fishing lines, maybe even a garrote or two. Given enough time, you might even be able to knit yourself a very unique set of armor. When the user produces more than 10 feet of silk, they will notice a tiny spider bite appear underneath their ring. I assume like on their finger. Harmless at first, but who knows what will happen if they continue to harvest silk. I really like that. He made a note that these were kind of generic fantasy items, so they're not like statted specifically for Dungeon World, but I think that's okay. I don't think they need to be. I don't think this one needs to be. I like that it has like this sort of unidentified but possible danger attached to it, you know? And it's kind of different, you know? It's very visually interesting. I like the idea of just like, you know, pulling out this wire-like silk from this ring, and then you have this ominous spider bite. What does it mean? What does it do? Right? So, yeah, it's cool.
All right, I want to do the next one. It's from listener Russell. This item is called the Auditor's Necklace. This leather choker is clasped in the front with a coin-sized ivory disc carved with the sigil of the goddess of trade. If anyone lies to you while you wear the necklace, the disc turns cold against your skin. If you lie while wearing the necklace, the goddess rejects you and the necklace is inert unless you atone. I think that's really a very clever kind of item. It's very well defined what it can and can't do, and it's going to be useful under certain circumstances, and in others it might be really annoying where
it'll be a hindrance. Yeah,
where your player's like, oh, I'm gonna just try and pull this necklace off real quick in the middle of a speech, and you're like, no, you're wearing that.
I like items that are kind of they're kind of straightforward, because I feel like if I was a wizard making magic items, I would go for things that like have a certain practical use, right? And so I like when items have like a real like practical use to them. If I had written this, though, if I had written the Auditor's Necklace, I would have made it so that fucker chokes you if you lie. But that's just the way I run a game. So
you wouldn't even warn people though that would happen. You would just let it happen.
Yep, they'd learn it in real time.
But that's a great use of the kind of moves of it, defining like why it's called what it's called. That was really clever. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah. The last one here we're going to do today is from our friend Ray, the Gloves of the Master Opener. When you wear these exquisite gloves of supple blue-dyed leather, your sense of touch is at least as good as it is without the gloves on, though they still provide some protection. When you take them off after having worn them for a few hours, you discover that you can still feel them when you are not wearing them. With reasonable amount of effort and concentration, you learn the trick of manipulating them just as if they were on your hands, even when they are out of your sight. This remote control becomes more difficult with distance. The limit seems to be about a mile. Also, they cannot do anything, lift anything, etc. that your own hands could not do, and you have no sense other than touch. They will, however, levitate in the air when activated at the normal height of your hands, no higher than you can reach while standing on the ground. After exercising this mental trick with the gloves, you will find they have a few quirks and sometimes act of their own accord. Their old master appears to have had a fondness for petting pretty things, jewels, works of art, attractive people. That's so creepy. Pets things. So when you wear the gloves remotely, you're going to roll plus charisma, and he explains why it's charisma here in a sec. On a 10, the gloves respond perfectly to your commands. On a 7 to 9, the gloves are responsive, but they get distracted at a key moment and also act on an impulse of their own. I love it. I think it's really cool. He says he chose charisma because control is essentially a matter of willpower and dealing with the personality of the gloves. I kind of like that. A more mechanical approach would be to use dexterity. A more arcane approach would be to use int. I think any of those would be fine. I kind of like it as a charisma thing, like you kind of bonding with the gloves in a way. I actually have a few of my own magic items that are like articles of clothing with personalities, you know, and they're also operated through charisma, so I'm down with that. But yeah, that's a cool item. I think it's really fun.
These magic items have been great. We keep seeing more and more good ones every day, so listeners, please just keep submitting them, and I look forward to reading more of them. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
Okay, this is what I imagine a lot of people have been waiting on since last episode. When we last saw Urbina, she was at the Black Gate, but you had not yet rolled for the result of the Black Gate. Just catch the listeners up. Describe the Black Gate for Urbina again.
Urbina's vision is fading to black, and then she sees her ancestral home, like it looks immaculate. And she begins to walk towards it and sees family members and some of her ancestors from long, long ago all milling about and kind of keeping the place going, like they're just living their normal everyday lives. It seems very pleasant. And then, oddly enough, she sees someone who she didn't think had passed beyond the Black Gate. She sees her mother come out the front door and begin to beckon her in with a big smile on her face.
All right, the moment of truth. Roll.
Oh, come on. No!
Oh, no. All right, pass beyond the Black Gate, Urbina.
Urbina looks over her shoulder, and she can just barely make out the faint impression of herself wrapped up in a great shining tree-like substance. Seems to be crushing the life out of her. And then she looks forward and sees her mother, and her mother is running towards her with open arms, and Urbina begins to cry and runs forward and embraces her mother.
And then goes back into the house and the door shuts.
Yeah.
So now we have to have a conversation about where we go from here. We got to make a new character since Ramshackle and Urbina are gone. So do you have any thoughts on who you might want to play?
If we want to keep going with this thread of story, either someone in Ramshackle's life or someone in Urbina's life might be involved and might notice that they're missing or something.
I prefer to keep it in the same rough time period. I love like hard narrative shifts and nonlinear narratives or narratives that are kind of jumbled up a little bit.
Yeah.
And one of my really, really favorite like sort of like narrative perspective shifts is like the movie Psycho. You know how in the movie Psycho about like halfway through the main character is killed and we pick up witnessing the story through these other characters who are kind of following up on that person's disappearance, right? I like that. I think it'd be cool to do another Castafiel, maybe like one of her brothers, or maybe she has a sister or something like that, who, you know, is in the same city or investigating her disappearance or something like that. One thing that I like about the Castafiels is that previously we'd established that they're suffering from some sort of curse or plague that we never really defined. Mm-hmm. And so that might be fun to follow up on. That's at least something that we learned in our brief moment with Urbina. A very, very brief moment before we left her. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm on board with playing another Castafiel.
Okay. Do you have your new character ready?
Yes, I think I've got everything put together for him.
All right. Tell me his name.
So his name is Domenico Castafiel. He has a thin body, sharp eyes, styled hair, and stylish robes.
Is he a good-looking guy?
Yeah, he is a Castafiel, and they are all of like noble lineage. And so they all have the same kind of features that are striking. We mentioned that Urbina had some striking, noble-looking features.
Right.
And he plays it to maximum effect.
Okay. All right, awesome. And he is a wizard.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I'm imagining that Urbina was kind of the sneaky arm of the family, where if they needed something taken care of quietly, that was her job. He's more the upfront, shaking hands and kissing babies face of the family.
Okay, all right, I'm into that.
So he is also on a quest to get something for this family curse, whatever that may be.
Yeah, we haven't quite defined that curse yet, have we?
No, not really.
Well, I think we should talk about that curse, right? Because now you are a character, you are inhabiting a character of that family, so it makes sense that you know about the curse. Do you have any thoughts on what the curse is?
I could come up with some different things, but I was honestly playing off of the fact that I knew that Urbina, in your other Dungeon World campaign, that Urbina was a vampire. So right. I was thinking it was something of that nature?
My thought on it is the Castafiel curse is that every now and then, not every Castafiel, but whenever a Castafiel dies, they rise back up as a vampire. And so the family is desperately trying to figure out how to solve this problem because they consider it unclean and unholy. And very likely the ones that turn into vampires probably get hunted by people and like it becomes a big, traumatic thing. That's probably what it is. Like there's a sort of curse of undeath upon the Castafiels.
Yeah, they're restless in their graves or whatever.
Yeah, not all of them. I just think some of them are.
Cool. That sounds good. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm hunting for some kind of magical item that's going to help keep my relatives at their rest.
Okay, I like that. We're going to open up with a party, a masquerade ball, kind of a Venice-esque city even. I think that it has like waterways moving through it and that sort of thing, right? And people travel by boats to get to things. And you're at a party being held in the home of a one Eotho Bruno. Now, Eotho is a crime lord of sorts in the city. He is known to engage in some shady dealings. He's also ostensibly a merchant and has some legit businesses, but he is very much a criminal element. But he's become so rich that even people like you, like the Castafiels, have something to do with him, right? And so it wouldn't be unusual for you to receive an invitation to this party. Are you going to go?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard there were some things that were recently looted by his crew that I might be interested in seeing. That's why I'm going. It's
a masquerade party after all, masquerade ball. I'd like to know what you're dressed up as.
I'm imagining that this is a very traditional kind of masquerade where it's just very fancy, flamboyant clothing and masks that cover the upper half of your face.
Right. Feathers, glitter, jewels.
That have feathers and those kinds of things. That I am wearing the Castafiel colors, which are like a deep maroon. That's the color of my cloak. And then the inner lining of the cloak is like a really velvet green. And then I'm wearing a short cape in addition to my robe. And so you can see the flash of the green underneath. And the coat of arms is on the back of that, of the Castafiel family.
Right. And you're moving, you take a little, gondola to where Eotho's like manse is in the city. And you get out and you see people kind of streaming in through the front gate. They're all clearly dressed for the party. And there are men at the gate who are dressed like, they are dressed like ravens, but like fancy ravens. They have like black raven masks and like these wild like purple and black feathers and like these purple and black like kind of servants livery that they're wearing. And they're there at the front, like taking people's invitations and confirming they're supposed to be there and that sort of thing. And you step up and they take your invitation and they say, "Greetings, Lord Castafiel."
Yes, this is quite the to-do that you have going on here.
Yes. Master Eotho has many splendid wonders and delights to entertain you.
I'm sure he does. You wouldn't happen to have heard anything about a recent raid that he has managed to find different treasures and things, would you?
I don't know anything about the business that my employer gets up to. But perhaps you should go talk to the majordomo of the house. He knows a lot more about what goes on around here.
Indeed. Very good. And I tip him and wander on into the party.
Indeed. And as you enter into the grand sort of like, there's like a grand foyer, and then you go deeper into a ballroom. It's all beautiful marble and chandeliers and very, very fine, fragrant people. And there's towers of pastry and there's wine and there's singers. And ostentatiously, Eotho has he has like circus performers. Like there's a local circus that he's brought in who are like entertaining guests in various parts of the home. And it's quite a party. And I think we'll leave it there.
All right, listeners, that just leaves our final question. Who's really in control here?
That would be the Gauntlet gaming community. We can be found on Google Plus by going to the community section of Google Plus and searching for The Gauntlet. We'd love to see you there. We always have good conversations, and it's a great place to follow up with David and I if you have any questions about the show or anything at all. We are on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG, and we also have a meetup group called Gauntlet Hangouts where we run our online games. You can find a link to that in our G Plus community. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's our show.